Welcome everyone. Today I will show you the cover letter that got me into BCG. And today we have Visha, who I know from Cambridge, and she works at a tech company in New York, and she's gonna walk you through my cover letter and give some edits. Shall we get started?
Yeah, let's do it. This is a little bit going back in time to when we'd review each other's applications back in university. So let's dive in.
All right, let's do that.
Great. So I'll take it from the top. I think looking at your cover letter, I mean, first of all, obviously it was effective. You got the job at BCG, a little spoiler. So that part's great. So really we'll talk about things that could have been incremental improvements. None of these are sort of like dramatic rewritings of your cover letter.
Absolutely. And at the same time, as we walk ourselves through it, I also want to share my story as well of how I managed to create those sentences and what was the background as well.
Yeah, that's perfect. I think sometimes the cover letter can feel a little more ambiguous than the resume. Giving some of that behind the scenes will be helpful.
All right, so starting first with the header. There's no header.
No, you went for a clean approach. I mean, again, there's no absolute rules, but what we would recommend is that you use the same header as your resume, actually, and that will have your name, your contact information, and just be really consistent between the documents.
Exactly. We've actually shared a couple of weeks ago our video on the resume. I only had the full name, and then we also suggested to add some additional things like the contact number and the LinkedIn link and so on. So I guess we would need to also put it in here.
Yeah, exactly. And then the other thing you could add just after that, I see you have Dear Recruitment Manager. I think that or Dear Hiring Team, if you're not sure exactly who you're reaching out to, totally works. Or in cases where maybe you're applying to multiple offices.
In hindsight, I think I knew.
You did know, I think.
Because when you think about BCG or other firms, they usually have their regional websites that you can just go, and there it usually says who is the HR head. So I could have done the effort of putting their name actually.
So I think in that case, the name, and you could even say Dear Name and Team, would be a really nice touch, and it would make it feel a little bit less of a copy paste maybe from other letters.
Okay, all right, let's continue.
Great. So that said, though, I really like your sort of opening section. As you cover in your Secure the Interview course, you always recommend kind of opening with a little bit of a hook, your value offering as a candidate, and then a little bit more information on why specifically that firm and that office location. So I see really clearly that you have those sections laid out. And I like that you kept the first bit really short and concise. Like, as a Cambridge and Warwick graduate, that's a big selling point. Currently working at Carney, also very big selling point. And then how you want to contribute to the firm in that location. So I actually think that's like a pretty perfect opening.
Okay, I heard you saying Secure the Interview course.
Yes.
All right.
Oh, yes.
So that's a good time to also talk about that. In Prepmatter Secure the Interview course, we basically have some videos that will teach you how to get your cover letter to the next level. It's absolutely free. You should take a look at that. And we also have some templates for you to take a look at as well. And there I've selected 5 cover letter samples from my trainees who made it to MBB. So it's always useful also to take a look at some examples.
All right, let's go into now your second main paragraph. This is normally the meat of your cover letter where you talk about what you offer as a candidate. I think one of the mistakes we often see here is someone sort of fully repeating their resume, but I really like that here you sort of have the narrative around your resume. So this is sort of the written down version of the tell me about yourself interview question.
Yeah, so I remember that when I was writing it down, I found it a little bit challenging to understand what experiences shall I select.
Yeah.
And when I also help people craft their cover letter as well, that's just one of the conversations that take a lot of time because we really need to go over their resume, understand what experiences would be the most relevant, and we need to group it nicely across different skills, right?
Yeah, I think that's a great point. These documents should work together. So it should be kind of clear which work experiences you're pulling from, but they shouldn't repeat one another.
Exactly. You just don't want to copy paste the same thing in your cover letter because then it would also be very long too.
Yeah.
I try to keep it as concise as possible, but like you said, it's still the chunky bit of the cover letter. There's no way around it. I think it's perfectly fine. And I see here that I've categorized my skills, experiences into hard and soft. That could be one way. Or what do you think might be some other ways that I could have grouped it perhaps?
Yeah, I think that works. There's different vocabulary, right? You could say analytical or business skills relative to communication and teamwork. I think sometimes we also see quantitative versus qualitative. So
that's true.
And you could always tweak depending on what you see in the job description of that specific firm, what language they like to use.
We actually uploaded a video a couple months back on our YouTube channel about the top skills that consulting firms are looking for this year. So I would also highly suggest you to take a look at that video. There are a couple of skills that I've highlighted. You may want to put those in your cover letter too.
Yeah, I think that's perfect to just pull the latest language.
Also, this is a cover letter from 9 years ago.
Yes.
So, of course, at that time, we didn't have huge data and analytics oriented skills. Now it is almost a must have, right? So surely these kind of skills need to be also put in the cover letter. So definitely check the video out so that you could be more up to date with what they're looking for.
Yeah, I totally agree. That said, as we look through this, I do like how you bucketed your skills. You call out again the experience from A.T. Kearney, which I think is great because that's directly applicable to the types of work you would do at BCG. And then as we look a little bit further, you do a good job, I think, of pulling a few specific examples from your resume. So I see you pull the example around like the trade agreement between Turkey and the US, and then you pull a little bit from like your China and Ghana work experiences. So that's exactly what you want to do here, is sort of tell a story with sort of all of that rich information that you've documented in your resume.
Yeah, so going back to our previous conversation on my resume where you reviewed it, one of the things that you highlighted was that maybe I could have quantified some experiences. So I feel like there are no numbers in here. If I had it, I think would have been added another touch to it.
Yeah, so I think quantifying your impact is the most important for your resume, but it's definitely good to pull into your cover letter where you can, especially if you maybe have one or two achievements that are really impressive and you want to make sure aren't missed. I would put those in both documents.
Yeah, makes sense. Great. Moving to the next paragraph, you would think that this is another section, but now that I'm reading it, it's just an extension to the previous paragraph. So what is your take on that? Do you think I should have made it as one paragraph, or I should have had maybe one paragraph on soft skills and one the hard skills? And I'm seeing here that the leadership is rather a soft skill. Maybe I could have bundled it under that, but what do you think?
Yeah, I think that's right, especially since you actually do talk about soft skills at the second half of your earlier paragraph. This does feel a little like it fell off the island. I think it's great, right, to talk about working with leaders and to talk about the skills needed because you'll be put in front of fairly senior audiences. Perhaps you could have maybe shortened this a little bit and then attached it to the earlier paragraph just so that you have your soft skills all covered together.
Yeah, I totally agree. I also don't know why I put consulting in brackets there.
I noticed that as well. Consulting experience.
Catches your eye, right?
A little bit. And again, these aren't absolute right or wrongs, but I think it would have been cleaner to just say my experience.
Of course. So just to give you more context here as well. So the year here was 2013, 2014 when I developed this.
Yes.
And my English at that time wasn't that good. And I remember that I got some help from some friends as well on wordsmithing too. And we've uploaded a video recently on how to use ChatGPT to apply to consulting firms. So I really feel like if you're ever struggling with wordsmithing, or if you just wanted to phrase it a little differently, you can definitely use such AI tools right now. Obviously, you still need to work through, my course or coach to get to a very good level. But if you still need a final touch, I think this kind of digital tools will help you.
Yeah, absolutely. I think using, like you said, like a combination approach. And then I think having someone who is a native speaker in that language read through for you just to make sure everything sounds natural is definitely the way to go.
And one of the mistakes that I see is some people just make some either grammar mistakes or they simply just forget a word or two. So using such tools or using the likes of Grammarly would really help you in proofreading.
Yeah, I think no matter how many times we proofread our own documents, if you've looked at something too long, you miss it. So yeah, any AI tool or Grammarly or something like that, I think is great for the grammar piece of it. And then having a human set of eyes for the overall language is a really good way to do it all together.
Yeah, because 9 years ago, I don't think there was such tools available. Now it's just
not as widespread. Yeah, we're a little old.
All right, let's move on.
Okay, great. So I think then we move into the paragraph, and I love that you have John and Jane Doe, who I assume are real people that you've replaced here.
I had to sanitize it, but
absolutely.
Shout out to the people
that got you there. But no, I think it's really great. And actually, now that I see this mentioned here, this is something you could have mentioned in your first paragraph as well. I think it's always great to mention, especially if one of these folks or both referred you. It's great to make sure that's in the intro, and then you can repeat it here as well.
One of the things that I teach my students is, especially for the fit interview portion, is that you really have to show your motivation that you want to work at, say, BCG's Istanbul office and not Milan office.
Sure, sure.
So I see in my cover letter here that I probably could have detailed a little bit more, at least show some sort of proof that I've done my research and I know what kind of projects that they work on. I feel it sounds a little generic, but quite curious to know your thoughts.
Yeah, I think for some people it will be more obvious. Like if it's very clear that you grew up and then went to university and are applying to an office location all in the same area, you might need to do a little less explaining. But as we talked about in your resume, you have work experience from all over the world. You studied in the UK. Given all that, I know you are from Turkey, but it might be worth like one more line explaining that because it may not be obvious to the reader.
Of course. So maybe structuring it around some professional reasons and personal reasons, exactly how we do it for fit interview questions about, why do you want to move to this office and such. I think that could have been a nice structure here.
Exactly. And you don't need to be overly personal, but it's okay to say, this is where I grew up or this is where my family is based. Like everybody who's applying is a human being. And I think those are like very real reasons for why we choose specific office locations.
Exactly. And if there was any exceptional circumstances that probably lead you to have a low GPA or, taking a leave of absence, it would have been also pretty good to mention that. In my case, it wasn't the case, but it's also just another thing you can always do before you move on to, why this office, to kind of explain yourself better.
Yeah, absolutely. No, this is sort of your space where if there's anything positive or maybe contextual you want to call out, definitely use it.
Okay, great. The last section we have is more like the conclusion. So in this case, I don't think you have to be very wordy here because you've already explained your value proposition and your motivation behind why you want to choose that office. But if you have any thoughts, happy to hear.
I agree. I think this last paragraph is normally a little perfunctory. So you're probably not going to say anything net new. It's just a little bit of a reminder. Honestly, I think of your enthusiasm. It's a little bit sometimes abrupt to just close after the why this firm paragraph. And so I think just saying like, I'd be delighted to interview, or I really hope to be able to interview, I think is a nice closing. And you definitely don't need more than 2 or 3 lines here.
Absolutely agreed. All right. I think we're done with the cover letter review, right? I
think so. I think it's in great shape.
Fantastic. So today we've talked about the exact cover letter that got me into BCG. Hope we added value to you. If you think we did, please go ahead and subscribe to our YouTube channel. And if you want to learn more about not just the cover letter, but also resume and networking, please check our website, Prepmatter, and you'll find our free security interview course. We'll see you in the next video. Take care.